What a weekend. Once again, March Madness delivered. And when I say March Madness, I am talking about the real March Madness. I'm not talking about the polished turd that the mainstream media refers to as March Madness, or as the rest of us prefer to call it, the women's tournament. Like most normal dudes in America, March Madness is one of my favorite events of the year. My interest has been magnified through the first weekend this year because Uncle KC is currently in first place in his pool, and if that holds, Uncle KC is set to win around $5,000. The opening weekend, though, of March Madness, it gave us everything that we have come to expect. Buzzer beaters, close games, games being decided in the closing minutes. I thought everyone was enjoying the weekend, but then I get on the Twitter and I notice thousands of lonely dudes complaining about March Madness. What happened to college basketball? Where is Cinderella? I was primed and ready to spank the wanker, but the beautiful Cinderella never appeared. What happened to college basketball? College basketball is one of the few sports that is not in decline. The NFL is the drizzling shits. The regular season in the NBA has become unwatchable. We were talking about this yesterday on the channel Discord server. I actually feel bad for these kids and Gen Z LGBT. The America that we grew up in as millennials or Gen Xers. These kids in Gen Z, they never got to experience that version of America. Think about it. Modern music sucks. Hollywood continues to produce toxic garbage. We grew up with Jerry Springer, Montel Williams, Jenny Jones. We had legendary performers like Michael Jackson, Nirvana, Alice in Chains. Our generation of rappers, they displayed uncontrolled masculinity. What does Gen Z have? They've got rappers wearing dresses, painting their fingernails. And they've got some dork named Sabrina Carpenter admitting that she is allergic to toxic masculinity. We grew up watching the greatest generation of quarterbacks the NFL's ever seen. We grew up watching Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Charles Barkley. Gen Z, they've got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who flops around like a damn fish. So I understand why it's natural to complain about the current state of sports and entertainment. What I don't understand is all of the complaining I'm seeing about March Madness. March Madness is one of the few events we have left that still delivers. Yet for some reason, thousands of people spent the entire weekend complaining about the tournament instead of actually enjoying it. Why? Because for the second consecutive year, Cinderella wasn't invited to the ball. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel is in the description below. Today on the second channel, I'm going to talk about something positive in women's basketball. As you guys know, Uncle KC is not a fan of women's basketball, but something happened over the weekend between a coach and a player that I thought was great. The head coach of Maryland, she went viral for getting into the ass of one of her star players. And instead of complaining about it, instead of making herself the ultimate victim, which is exactly what would happen in the WNBA dump, the young woman from Maryland, the player, she appreciated her coach for coaching her. So if you haven't already, click the link in the description below, subscribe to the second channel. Headline of the New York Times: the golden age of the March Madness upset feels over. Yeah, it doesn't feel over. It is over. And I think it's a good thing. I know fans claim to like underdogs. I know fans claim to like upsets, but the numbers prove otherwise. For starters, one of the things that made upsets special in March Madness was the fact that they used to be rare. 20 years ago, when George Mason made it to the Final Four, it was a major story because we'd never seen it before. Problem is, it became far too common. VCU made it to the Final Four in 2011, Wichita State in 2013. You guys remember Loyola Chicago? Yeah, most people don't, because by the time they made it to the Final Four in 2018, the gimmick had become stale. When Butler and VCU made the Final Four in 2011, 15 million people watched their game. 12 years later, when it was Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, ratings had declined by 2 million viewers. This same thing happens in the NBA. Anytime there is a dynasty, fans complain about it. They complained about the Heatles. They complained about the Rainbow Warriors. But if you look at the most popular eras in the NBA, those eras all involve dynasties. The Bulls in the 90s, the Lakers in the early 2000s, the Heat and the Rainbow Warriors in the 2010s. Look at the NBA now. Fans got exactly what they wanted. Captain Doofus Adam Silver listened to the fan base. He eliminated super teams, made it impossible for championship contenders to have long-term success. Over the last few years, there has been a different champion in the NBA every season, and the ratings are in the pooper. Cinderella teams are exciting in the first round. They're exciting in the moment. But the casual audience, they want to see real teams compete in the latter rounds of the tournament. I don't want to see Mercer in the Sweet 16. What the hell is a Mercer? Sounds like some dude who's responsible for doing my taxes. I don't want to see St. Peter in the Final Four. Who in the hell wants to watch Bucknell versus Butler? I want to see powerhouse programs competing against each other. Yes, NIL has had a major impact on March Madness. Yes, the powerhouse teams with all the money, they will naturally get all of the best players. But I think it's made the tournament better. These mid-major teams, they're kind of like minor league sports. Damn near every minor league sport in America has failed. The UFL's on life support, the USFL, the XFL, and they all fail for the same reasons. No stars, and they're offering a substandard product. However, even though NIL has made the tournament better, even though players are being paid, I don't think it's benefiting most of these players long term. They're sacrificing long-term opportunities for short-term gain. Last week, I was listening to Doug Gottlieb. He was being interviewed by Jason Whitlock, and for some reason, the video popped up on my feed. He was talking about the long-term impacts that NIL will have on college athletes. The reason Doug Gottlieb is where he is at today is because of the connections that he made when he was playing at Oklahoma State. He got his start in sports media by working at a local radio station in Stillwater. And the reason he was given the job is because Doug Gottlieb was a big name locally. Jay Williams, Grant Hill, they will always have a home at Duke. If something happens, if they get fired or they lose their job for whatever reason, they can always fall back on the connections that they made when they were playing at Duke 30 years ago. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. Yesterday, Darren Peterson played his final game at Kansas. 12 months from now, he will be all but forgotten by people at Kansas. Now, of course, Darren Peterson will be okay. He'll be making millions of dollars in the NBA, but what about all the players who aren't good enough to play professionally? Dudes like Adam Morrison, who was the third pick in the NBA draft. He was out of the league before he could even sign his second contract. He never had a home in the NBA, but Adam Morrison will always have a home at Gonzaga. Two things can be true at the same time. I don't think NIL has hurt March Madness. Matter of fact, I think it's made it significantly better. But long term, the short term money, I don't think it's helping the vast majority of the players. And if you want to complain about a tournament being boring, complain about the women's tournament. Over the weekend, ESPN was given a severely bruised caboose on social media. The front page of ESPN.com was showcasing the scores from the women's tournament instead of showing the scores for the real March Madness. Now, obviously, ESPN was doing this because they own the rights to the women's tournament and they're begging people to actually watch it. But after having their caboose bruised on social media, ESPN put the men back on the front page. The media, they are continuing to beg us to watch women's basketball. But looking at some of these scores, why in the hell would anyone waste their time watching? The average margin of victory in the first round of the women's tournament, 24 points. There were 8 games yesterday. Half of them were blowouts. Saturday, the Lady Cocks from South Carolina, they beat something called Southern 103-34. Who in the hell wants to watch that? Look, maybe it's just me, but I think March Madness is better without a lot of these smaller programs or these mid-major teams advancing to the later rounds of the tournament. But you tell me, sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.